Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our virtual talk on Amazon's International Technology Team. Great to have you all here. I'm Graham Wallace. I'm a recruitment manager here at Amazon. My team is responsible for the hiring of our specialized tech roles. That includes senior engineers, software development managers, technical program managers, and technical product managers. Great to have you here and great to meet you all. Also helping me today is Makis and Natasha, two of my colleagues who will be on the moderating the chat function for you. So just to kick us off, I have a quick ask, please. If you have bought from Amazon before, please can you tell us where you did that from? Which country was that in? If you could jump on the chat function and let us know, that would be great. I'll just have a quick wait until I get a few responses through. While we're doing that, I'll just welcome a few people. Here we go. So we've got people joining us who have used Amazon in Luxembourg, Germany, France, UK, Belgium, India, Brazil, the US, Spain, Hungary, Turkey, Italy, Argentina. Oh, someone from Japan. Welcome from all the way over there. Great. And it's good to hear that, good to see that you can all hear me okay. So how do we, Amazon, scale our technology to delight our customers in all these different locations around the world? And then also, how do we launch in new countries with the same level of customer obsession, personalization, localization, and bespoke offering? Well, the answer lies within our international technology team, or InTech, as we call it. And I'm delighted to say that we're joined today by Heiko Schilling, one of the directors in InTech who leads our expansions team. He'll be talking to you today about how we do that. So, Heiko, over to you.
Thanks, Graham. Thanks, everybody, for making this work today. And really, thank you for having me here this afternoon. Love the fact that we're talking to an international crowd. That's exactly the sort of technology and business that we're into. Yeah, I'm Heiko. I work for International Tech. I joined Amazon just about 11 months ago. So what I want to talk about today is really, firstly, do a quick intro, and then also talk about how it actually was to onboard during an ongoing global pandemic. So we spent like 5-10 minutes on that, and then I want to do a deep dive with you to really talk about scaling Amazon, because that's in fact what we're doing. So InTech, or International Technology, is the team that takes Amazon to the world. So we're taking our Amazon.com stack and we're exploring and expanding that into rest of world. Let me start off with a first question to start opening your mind a little bit to the kind of challenges that we're facing. So if you look at the world, you're looking at just about 200 countries. In those 200 countries, people speak nearly 7,000 languages, and they do use officially 180 currencies. And that's not counting any digital or cryptocurrencies. So that's a whole different ballgame there as well. And when I checked this morning, it's 7.8 billion people as of today, and growing. So now the question that our team is basically trying to solve in that framework is, how do you scale? And not just scale, how do you provide a global experience that at the same time can be localized? So for each one of those 7.8 billion individuals, how can you work backwards from what's the individual need, what's the individual concern, and then how do you create something that is scalable where we want to be? So which is the rest of the world, the whole planet. Now, for today, it's 3 parts. So quick intro. I start with onboarding into Amazon, first observations. Some of you are about to go that path, some of you thinking about it. So I hope I can answer some of the questions that you might have. By all means, put in more questions as we go along. So we do have another 20, 25 minutes Q&A at the end of this session. And the second half of this talk is then around tech challenges. So I call out 3 major tech challenges. So we go a little bit deeper there. So I scratch on the surface, but more than happy to do follow-ups and deep dives if you want to know more in-depth about particular areas that I'm calling out. Now, about myself. So Heiko Schilling, I'm 32 years into my career, or it's my 100,000th anniversary in the binary numbering system. I was born in East Germany, so roundabout there. So the little village that you see there, that's Effelder in East Germany. The mountains that you can see on the backside, that's West Germany. Up until 1989, there used to be a fence in between those 2 parts of the country, pretty much like you know today from Northern and South Korea. So I was always, as a kid growing up, looking at those mountains, and I felt like I really want to go and explore the world someday. So later on, I moved to Berlin, grew up there further. And the picture that you see there, that was my subway station where I entered every day. And someone wrote on this building used to stay in a different country at some point. So human willpower can achieve anything at once. And I found that quite inspiring when I was a kid, always looking at that statement, because at some point this was East Berlin, and later it became just Berlin. And this is what literally was meant by this. But obviously there's second meaning to that. And this is how my career started, right? So the moment the wall came down, I actually wanted to explore the world and I wanted to learn stuff. So I moved on. I lived by now in 12 different countries. So we will talk a little bit about how it actually is to move between those locations and what that means, and if there was anything particular around moving during a global ongoing pandemic. And short answer is there was, but let's talk about those. Then I wanted to learn a lot of stuff. So I started at university and ended up at 5 different universities collecting degrees as I went along. So maybe you recognize some of the logos here. So Oxford, Cambridge, ETH Zurich, Technical University in Berlin, and Georgia Augusta in Göttingen in Germany. So those were the universities where I spent a good time of my life, while at the same time running startups or working for corporates. My first startup was actually in 1989, and that was an online bookshop system. So a bit of a coincidence, but at that time, we had a friend working at a bookshop, and he at some point said, you kids at school, you're hacking all day. Why don't you get together and basically build something for my customers so that they can dial in on their modem and browse my bookshop catalog CD-ROM, and then they can order via modem connection their books and they pick it up at the shop. Can you do that? So we got sitting down. It took us 2 weeks to have a what you would call today a minimum lovable product, an MLP, and then another 2 months later, we had it installed in the bookshop, and then we went on having another 85 versions of that system sold to different bookshops in Germany and neighboring countries. So what you see there, that was my first modem at the time. So US Robotics, for those, I'm showing off a little bit my age here. So 9,600 bouts were actually fast at that time when I started. I went on, had 2 other startups in automotive context in algorithmic engineering. And then at the same time also worked at a number of corporates. The last gig that I had was in TomTom, a global navigation and mapping company, where we expanded to a customer base of 600 million, 187 countries, and 100 languages. So I was running the global navigation software engineering in TomTom for the past 13 years. This is what got me eventually into Amazon. So the challenge that Amazon presented was pretty much around scale and taking Amazon to the 200 countries that are out there and the 7.8 billion customers that are out there. So regardless of what product you're scaling, some of the challenges are very similar. And we will talk about that in a few moments. But before we go there, let me say a few things about how it is to relocate during a global pandemic. So together with my partner and my 11-year-old son, we lived in 12 different countries. So I stopped counting at some point, but we must have done somewhere north of 20 house relocations. And the more often do you do something, the easier it becomes, right? So they say if something is painful, then do it more often and it becomes less painful. And in fact, this is the case, right? So every time you do a house move, it's a bit like a cleanup, and you collect or you filter the important stuff. And whenever we had this little rule that whenever there were boxes that we still had unopened from the last house move, we just left them because those were stuff and things that we don't need anymore. And that was fine. But doing a house move during a global pandemic was a different kind of beast. So for once, you're missing the face-to-face contact. So we used to have people coming into the house. We went through everything that needs packing, everything that needs wrapping up. So you couldn't do that. We had to go on digital. So we spent a lot of time on all sorts of video conferencing tools and walked around the house, making sure that these are the things that need wrapping and packing and need to go. Then the actual move we did last year in July, and we essentially packed the essentials, so the most important bits, into our car and just started driving across Europe. So which was an interesting experience with lots of countries in lockdown and borders being closed. But eventually it was smoother than we anticipated because nobody was on the road. Ended up being the fastest trip across Europe that we've done so far, traveling from Birmingham in the UK to Cologne in Germany, where I live today. So we came into our new house. We actually had bought a new house just before the lockdown started last year in February. And then we were in the new house, just the packages that we had, and we're waiting for the rest of our stuff to come. So there were a slight delay, couple of weeks, but eventually we got all our stuff. There were a few dramas on the way, so we had all our stuff in the garage while unwrapping and unpacking, and then there was a thunderstorm and the roof was broken and some of our stuff got wet and so on. But eventually we solved all of that. The other challenge was around how do you do all your registrations where all the governmental offices are actually closed and then locked down. So that was another challenge. So we had to do a lot of phone calls, a lot of sending around paper copies. It was really in real time, a lot of governmental authorities digitized as we were trying to get the service from them, right? So one day they couldn't or weren't able to receive any emails with photocopies. Then we explained, can we do it that way? And while we were doing this, they kind of picked up and were learning. And eventually we got on that one as well. A couple of things that really helped, and this is where Amazon came in, is that I would like to call out, is Amazon provided relocation support with Grable and Fragoman, two of the companies we are using. And that was super helpful. So if you want, you can get the full package from house selling, buying support, car selling, buying support, the actual relocation, taking care of all of that. So you don't actually need to go into a lot of the details. So there's a great support. And that started already way before my day one in Amazon. Then the other thing, tax support. So I ended up being tax liable in 4 different countries through my career. So if you do this on your own, it's quite a challenge. So you definitely have to have some support there. So we're using PricewaterhouseCoopers there. And that's really helpful, having someone from each of the 4 countries basically helping you with tax returns, super helpful. Remote location onboarding. So the first half year, I actually worked still out of Birmingham for Amazon. So I had the first 2 weeks where I traveled to Luxembourg, where the European headquarters is and where my office is. But then everything got in lockdown. So Amazon was super flexible in actually having everybody working from the various remote locations. The working from home setup itself, a lot of support and offering there. So there's extra financial support for getting office desks and screens arranged. The infrastructure itself, so we're using Slack, Chime for video calling. So as we speak, we use Chime, obviously VPN, lots of other infrastructure that I found pretty amazing how a company of the size of 850,000 employees at that time just went remote from one day to the other without any hiccups. And that went super smooth. Also, what I wanted to call out is healthcare support. So we do have cases of people which relocated during lockdown or just before lockdown, where we also provide. So first of all, there's general healthcare support, which is super helpful. So it's particular if you talk about Luxembourg, there's only one healthcare insurance company that everybody's with. And then I live on the German side, so there's a bilateral agreement. So I have a German insurance company that takes care of all the concerns when I go to the GP on the German side, and that gets interchanged between the Lux insurance company. So no issues there. Very smooth onboarding on this side. And then the bit that I also wanted to call out, because it's a global pandemic and that hits different people differently, there's also a lot of special care for things like mental illnesses, mental health care that Amazon offers on top of the regular healthcare support. Now, if you have any questions particular on the relocation during a global pandemic, then please call them out in the Q&A and we can go deeper on that. What I would like to talk about now is going a little bit deeper into what we're actually doing in international tech. So I start with an Amazon view. So everything that Amazon does is eventually you can map down to what's called the Amazon flywheel. So if you look at that simple graphics here, so there's essentially 2 flywheels going. The center one is on the right-hand side, you see 2 sets of customers. First of all, on the right-hand side, you see our buying customers. This is where it says customer experience. On the left-hand side, you see our selling customers. Now, buying customers come online on our marketplaces on Amazon.com or .de or .co.uk. That generates traffic. The more traffic there is, the more interest is there with people who want to sell stuff. The more people selling things on our marketplace, the bigger the selection gets. The bigger the selection gets, the better the variety and the offering and the customer experience gets. And that attracts, again, more buying customers, which then attracts more traffic, attracts more sellers, creates more selection. If you get this working over time, and we've done or created that flywheel now 22 times for 22 marketplaces, it becomes basically a growing flywheel. And to put it simply, all what our team is doing is taking out friction from that flywheel. So this is where the second flywheel that you see there comes in. One of the friction points is really, putting it simple, we matchmaking buying customers with selling customers. The more cost we can take out from this matchmaking, the better it is. So the more we can reduce the cost structure, the more or the lower the prices get that we can offer to customers, and the more attractive the whole experience gets. So you essentially have a second flywheel going that builds or feeds into the first flywheel, and they keep spinning. So one of the objectives that we have as a team is identifying efficiencies, identifying where we can actually take out cost from the infrastructure that we're using and how we're building our marketplaces. I get back to that. Now, let me talk a little bit on international technology. So Intech is the team that brings Amazon to the world, put it very simply. So Amazon itself strives to be Earth's most customer-centric company. But in order to be Earth's most customer-centric company, you need to have a presence on Earth, right? So you need to be visible and accessible for your customers on planet Earth. So Intech is the team that actually owns the discovery and delivery of Amazon's engineering to the wide variety of customers and cultures of the world. So you saw some numbers and figures in the beginning. So we do this through a combination of partnerships with other Amazon tech teams and through a number of new projects that we're creating. So what does that mean? If you look at Amazon, Amazon at the very core consists of very many what is called two pizza teams. So a two pizza team is a team of the size, number of people that you can feed with two American-sized pizzas. So you're looking at around about a group of 10 to 12 people. So all the functions, all the roles are in this group of 10 to 12 people. So now these teams are operating individually or autonomously with an objective to feed or find efficiencies for customer or to innovate on behalf of customer. At scale, you're looking at round about a few 10,000 of those two pizza teams. Some of these teams, so there's two types of teams I should explain. One type is teams that own certain services, so we call them host teams. Other teams need to offer or build a service that touches on other teams' hosts or services. So we call them away teams. A team can be a host team and an away team at the same time. The setup is as such so that every service that's out there is owned by one team, and that's very clear. But when you're launching a new experience, you need to touch more than one service. So you need to be able, you need to have the flexibility to work in other services tech stacks or other teams' tech stacks. And that's why we have the setup of away teams and host teams. So now we are in Intech, we are both host teams and away teams. And whenever we see a gap in the experience, a new team or a new charter gets spin off, and there's a new host team that gets spin off with that. The actual work that we're doing, and that's peculiar about our team, really spans the entire stack. So it goes from the front-end customer experience all the way to back-end service tech. What you see on the right side on the slide is a number of what we call tech awards. So those are awards that we give out once per year, once per quarter, and they describe a little bit the cultural mindset and how the team is operating. Let me quickly explain them. So the first award is Nellie Bly Award. So Nellie Bly is an American journalist, lived 100 years ago, and she became famous for traveling Jules Verne's trip around the world. That was a charity trip, and she managed to do this trip, which in Jules Verne's book took 80 days. She managed to do this in 72 days and became quite famous for doing that 100 years ago. So the award itself is for innovation that enables a local feature for worldwide usage. So whenever we find something peculiar in one of the geo regions worldwide, we want to offer that service, that experience to our global customers, right? So whether that is micropayment in Southeast Asia that you can offer then to customers across the world, whether that is language experiences in Europe, you can offer a good language experience across the world. Wherever you find good, innovative customer experiences, we want to offer those across the world. The next award is Omotenashi Award, and Omotenashi is the Japanese word for a selfless obligation towards customer, without any expectations for return payment. And what that means is that whenever we work in other team stacks, services, so when we work in an away team operational mode, then we really have the ambition that we improve our team stack. right? So you leave the house in a better order when you found it in the first place. So this is the Omotenashi award, and we award teams that did that in an exceptional way. And the last award is the Fischer Award. So Arthur Fischer was a German engineer who came up with the plastic wall plug. And that improved how you can use screws. So screws have been around for 2000 years, but the plastic wall plug actually revolutionized and extended the usage and eventually revolutionized the building and construction industry. So something which was seemingly small had a huge impact. And that's precisely what this award is about. And if you find something in a tech stack which seems like a small improvement, but then has a wide blast radius, that is precisely where this award is for. So big impact with small improvements. So I'm calling out these three awards just to give a little bit of an insight of the way of working and the kind of thinking of how we operate in international tech. Now, let's talk about tech challenges. So the first challenge that I want to call out is on language and currency experience. So I mentioned in the beginning there are 7,000 languages in the world. Amazon, as of today, supports 19 languages, so 19. What that means is that there's an awful lot of content on our marketplaces that gets user-generated, whether that's user reviews or detailed pages from selling customers or any sort of dynamic content that gets generated. We want to have that translated in near real time into all the languages that we want to offer to our customers. So as of today, that means we are translating 30 billion characters every day. And that's corresponding to around about 60 million items which we touch and provide a international or a right language experience. So the term that I'm using here is ASINs. That's one of the terms that you will hear a lot in Amazon. ASIN stands for Amazon Standard Identification Number. So that is essentially, think of it, all the items that can be sold or bought on Amazon have a unique number, and that's the ASIN. So as of today, there's 50 billion ASINs in the inventory. So that's a selection of 50 billion that you can browse and discover as a customer. So every day we're touching 60 million of those ASINs, and we're translating 30 billion characters per day. So obviously you need to automate that. This is where machine learning comes in. So for each language, you need to build up and train a new model. For that, you need to have training data that needs to be populated. One of the typical challenges in those is whether you are an NLP background or whether you are a corpus linguists background. You have a different approach on how you think about automated translation. So one of the things that I want to call out here is stop words. So if you're building your ML models, then people, or there's a school of thought which identifies stop words as in, if you take out all the stop words, so those are words like and or articles, and then suddenly your machine model runs a lot faster. But if you look at that from a corpus linguistics or a general linguistics approach, then taking out stop words completely changes the meaning of clusters of words, right? In fact, it turns out that your stop words are quite essential and you can't take them out. Now, here's the challenge, right? So if you don't take them out, then your ML models wouldn't scale. If you do take them out, then your translation fails, right? So it doesn't really feel like a natural language translation. So how do you do that? How do you solve that challenge? That's one real challenge that we're looking in as of today. The next one is search. So at the moment, it's 19 languages. Does that mean you're building up 19 search indexes per language? So one per language. Or you could also be smarter and try to translate every search term first and then run it against a index. either way, so the jury's not out yet. So either way is a viable path forward, but obviously it requires different approaches depending on which approach you take. I also want to talk about touch points. So you're talking about voice, mobile, desktop. Desktop is the best understood. Mobile, on the mobile phone, you have a lot less real estate. So how can you shorten things like ASIN titles, so descriptions of products, in a meaningful way? How can you do this automated? Voice experience. So how can I have a conversational voice experience using Alexa on my phone? How is that different from your normal navigation experience that you would have on a mobile phone versus desktop? That's another wide area of challenges. Also interesting in that context, currencies. So there's 180 official currencies. Amazon today supports 86. Whenever you talk about currencies, currencies have fluctuating exchange rates that can change every split second. Now, while your customer is in the transaction experience, you offer a certain price at a certain currency exchange rate, but customer might not finish that transaction within a given period of time. So does that mean you offer it as a different price, which wouldn't be a good customer experience? So what do you do in those situations? Do you block a certain exchange rate? So there's a certain risk attached to that, and what risk are you able to take as a company by offering a certain fixed transaction or exchange price, which may change over time? So that's another area of problems. And finally, when talking about currency and prices, localized pricing. So what is the right price point? Right. So whenever you have a different set of sellers, different set of customers, how do you determine the right price point? So there's actually a lot of game theory playing into that, and that's another area to dive into. So let me speed up a little bit on the challenges. Next one is delivery experience. So customer did the browsing, found something that she or he likes, did the price comparison, so price is okay. Then the next question and the next challenge is, how do you get this particular ASIN, this particular item, how do you get it over? How do you get it over to customer? There's 1,000 fulfillment centers or warehouses, or a few thousand fulfillment centers across the world. Europe alone has 500. So how do you do the optimization? How do you move inventory as close to customer as possible within those fulfillment centers? I already mentioned 50 billion ASINs. How do you manage 50 billion ASINs in those fulfillment centers and have just-in-time availability there? Generally, it's a just-in-time optimization, right? So you can't move inventory early to customer because customer might not buy it. So how do you predict what inventory we need and where? Transport modes. What we saw with the global pandemic is that some arcs, like flight transport, was a lot less robust than others, right? So, but if you have a flight transport arc breaking down, then obviously this is disrupting your network. So that opens questions around robustness of your delivery. Last mile, the pickup points, home address accuracy. And then there's a whole bunch of optimization problems in there. So TSP, scheduling problems, multi-criteria, shortest path problems as well. Speeding up further, last challenge is custom work versus generic work. So at the moment, Amazon has 22 marketplaces out there, each of them with a country URL, but also 22 single stack marketplaces. Obviously, that doesn't scale. So how do you segment in a different way? How do you introduce parameters that describe you as a customer much more fine granular so that you can segment your customer base better? So this is where things like natural parameters come in. Legal entities as an atomic unit seems as a good concept to build your architecture around that. Going back to the matchmaking between customer and seller. So buying customer and seller. If they are in the same entity, you don't have an issue. If they are in different legal entities, you have cross-border challenges. How do you tackle those? Config versus code. So what's generic, what's custom? And then if you have config code or configuration, How do you store that? Centralized versus decentralized. There's different challenges attached to that. Last slide, and then we can open the Q&A. A few thoughts on and observations after the past 11 months. Things that you pick up, things that you expect Amazon to be, which turns out differently, and things that you're really positively surprised to see and learn. So first observation, Amazon is a super tribal company. So it's a very strong culture. And if you come in, sometimes it takes a while until you understand why people are doing things they do it, right? And you need to keep asking questions to understand and learn. Sometimes you get it eventually, and then it's an eye opener. Sometimes you don't get it, and it's kind of, it leaves you with a question mark, and keep asking questions. So make sure you understand Amazon culture if you go in. So what you see on the right side, that's Amazon DNA. That's the 14 leadership principles. That's baked into everything what the company is doing. And you can map a lot of things that are happening back to one of those leadership principles or several. Second observation, writing and reading culture. Literally every meeting starts with reading a doc, whether it's a 1-pager, 2, 3, or 6-pager. And the effort of putting down your thoughts in a document really structures your thought and leads to an educated or informed discussion, which you start really enjoying. Engineering excellence, super high. Swarm intelligence. Sometimes Amazon from the inside really looks like unorganized chaos. And the reason is you have those thousands, tens of thousands, 2 pizza teams, and they operate autonomous. And one of the underlying principles is that you take into account that there may be some overlap. So you find more than one team doing the same thing or slightly different things, but then the overall outcome is that the delivery to customers is faster. So this is what's meant by 1 + 1 is bigger than 2. One thing you can always count on with the teams is customer obsession. So everybody starts with a customer problem and customer insight and works backwards from that. And as long as you stick to that kind of mental model, then you typically find good contact points, good starting points to collaboration and delivery. Good. I stop here. There's a lot more we can talk about. I hand over to Graham, and then we go through the questions.
Thanks for that, Heiko. A great insight. In the normal world, we'd all be given a great round of applause now, so I'll just give a little virtual one on my own. Thanks for that.
Thank you,
yeah, we'll jump into some questions. Got some fantastic ones come through, so I'll put those to Heiko in a moment. There's a couple though that well, actually one main topic of conversation that keeps to reoccurring that maybe I'll just cover at first, just to give Heiko a minute or two's break, and that's around relocation, remote working, especially during COVID times. The roles that we have at the moment are based in Luxembourg. That's our European HQ. We have a strong team culture. Heiko's talked about our 2 pizza-sized teams, and we really want people to be immersed in that team culture. However, we are a modern tech firm. We are flexible. We're set up for remote working. Heiko mentioned at the moment, like most people, we're all at home working, and then we have the technology and infrastructure to do that. So in summary, the roles are based in Luxembourg, and we would be looking for ideally people to relocate to Luxembourg if you're not based there at the moment. Okay. However, we're in the middle of a global pandemic, and it's not always as easy as that. So we are super flexible on everything from remote working for an interim period, flexible on start dates, helping you with any problems that are unforeseen. A lot depends on where you're based at the moment, your right to work in the EU, in Luxembourg. So I really advise you to reach out to the recruitment team, have a discussion with them. We will do our best to accommodate you and make sure that you can start with Amazon as soon as possible, either be it remotely where you are or relocating to Luxembourg. So I hope that answers a few questions on that point. Obviously, Heiko mentioned there he lives in Germany. The roles are in Luxembourg. we said that you have to live in Luxembourg. Luxembourg is a unique one. It's a very small place, and we sort of define being based in Luxembourg as in the surrounding areas, so in a reasonable commuting distance from Luxembourg. So yes, we have employees based in Luxembourg who live in Belgium, Germany and France and commute in regularly, a bit like Heiko will do once he can go and meet his team properly, which I'm not sure he's been able to do yet. So I hope that answers a few questions on that. If you have any other follow-up ones, please do reach out to your recruiters. The email addresses will be coming soon for you. So now let's back to Heiko. A few questions about your team that have come in. Heiko, you're a director here. You've got a big team. How is it structured in terms of a mix of technology teams, engineering teams, product teams, and program teams?
Okay. Straightforward. It's 150 people, which translates into something like 15 two-pizza teams. Each team roundabout half are what's called software development engineers 1, 1/3 software development engineers 2, and then the remaining part is SD3s. We do have one principal engineer. We do have one PMT team. So each two-pizza team has one associated product manager technical. And then there are a bunch of two-pizza teams are then managed from SDMs. So we do have 6 SDMs. And they take care of people, personal development, career development, and overlooking delivery.
Great. Really great. Good. And linked to the engineering teams, Amazon is a big company, huge tech stack. Within your teams, what's the typical technology that you do use?
So there's a bunch of things. There's a bunch of things that we use. First of all, because of size of company, you find literally any technology, right? So a few things I want to call out. So whether that's Java, right, as language, Perl, Mason as framework, DynamoDB, AWS, Git for repository, Sable, it's a proprietary database, AWS Lucene, search engine, AWS Lambda, EC2, AWS App Config, and we have a proprietary internal code review tool, which we call Crux. Data Path, that's internal data materialization engine, and various, or there's one internal proprietary pipeline system for our CI/CD. I stop here, so we could go on forever.
Yeah, you're right. I think we have every technology under the sun somewhere in Amazon. But what I would also just add to that, we're very technology agnostic, and from a recruitment perspective, we don't look for you to be a guru in a specialist technology. We're looking for your underlying technology skill. So don't feel that if you don't know one of those technologies or are not an expert in those technologies that you wouldn't be suitable for Amazon. That's not the case. I'm sure we have C#, C++ engineers who are joining Heiko's team and learning new technologies all the time. So great. Heiko, just to expand a little bit more on the team and the technologies there, and specifically senior software development engineers, or SDE3s, as we call them internally. Could you just maybe clarify the difference of, the difference between an SDE3, a senior engineer, and an SDE2, and maybe how an SDE3 would be perceived in the outside world, outside of Amazon?
Okay. So first of all, generally on grading, Amazon is a flat hierarchy company, right? So I was a VP before, I came in as a director. So forget about one-to-one mappings of grades, right? And that's perfectly fine because the scale and the challenge is just unique, right? So you wouldn't find many companies with that size of impact that you could find here. An ST3 in the outside world is probably, for most companies, top-end chief engineer, principal engineer type of person, right? If I compare our ST1, ST2, ST3s, there's various aspects how you can look at this. One aspect is you look at ambiguity of tech requirements and ambiguity of business requirements. So ST1 typically close to zero ambiguity in either. So it's a very well-defined tech problem. The designs are already there. Business requirements are super clear. If I go further up, SD2, you are able to deal with a good amount of tech ambiguity. So which means you're actually able to do the designs of your own. So you have an understanding of the business requirements, and you can translate those into a design and then start implementing those. Or work with an SD1 and actually coach and train and mentor that SD1 to implement your designs. And then SD3, ambiguity on both dimensions. So a high level of ambiguity on the business side. So business not super clear on what is actually the problem that we're trying to solve, right? And obviously then also high ambiguity on the tech side. What's the best approach here? So you're capable of working both with business team on working out what it is that we're trying to solve here, what's the actual problem that we're trying to solve, and then you translate that into a tech design that you can work out at maximum complexity, maybe supported by SD2s, and then you have either implement yourself or have SD2s, SD1s implementing your designs jointly with you. So this is how you could differentiate, as said. So there might be other angles, other views how you could differentiate.
Great. If anyone is unsure about how their scope, how their experience matches up to Amazon, then
Sorry. That was my timer. So we are done now.
If anyone's unsure where their experience matches up to Amazon, again, please just reach out to the recruitment team and we'll be able to help you out there. A question that's come in that maybe I can help with is, what's the interview process for a senior software development engineer at Amazon? And I'll just see if I can get this screen, share my screen and get this on here for you now. Hopefully you guys can see that, but we will obviously speak with you. We'll gather some basic information, tell you a bit more about the role, have a CV review for you. And then the first step is a phone interview one. That's a role with maybe an engineering manager, maybe one of the lead senior engineering managers in the team. And that's talking around scope, the work that you've done in the past. Heiko just mentioned there how being able to handle ambiguous problems and ambiguous challenges. So we'll be asking you questions where you've done that in the past and asking you to give us good examples of success stories from your career. If that goes well from both sides, we'll progress to a second phone interview. That's a lot more technical. It will probably be with one of our senior engineers or a principal engineer, and we'll cover off systems design and coding. We'll probably ask you to draw up a whiteboard of a systems design problem for us. And then if they go well from both sides, we'll invite you to the main interview day. Obviously, we're doing those virtually at the moment. You'll spend probably around 5 or 6 hours with us during one day. And you'll meet 5 or 6 different people from Amazon, each one-on-one sessions for about an hour, where we'll cover everything around systems design, coding. Amazon's leadership principles are really key for us. All through the interview process, we'll be looking for you to demonstrate them to make sure you match up with our culture from our point of view. But then following that, that's it. We hope to be in a position to make a decision. We hope that you also obviously are in a position to make a decision as well, and you're fully educated on the role and what our offering is. And then if both sides are happy, then we'll progress to an offer for you and work through that possible relocation, visa, work sponsorship with you as well. So again, any more questions on that, then please do follow up with the recruitment team. I think Makis will be putting the correct email addresses into the chat soon. So there's a bit more on the recruitment process. A really good question here. A bit more about outside of the tech, Heiko. You're in a senior leadership role. You've got a family. How do you balance work and family time, especially at the moment?
Okay. So both my wife and myself, we are both workaholics, right? So let's start with that. And we both have a full-time career. So my wife is a professor at Birmingham University. So really, balance always has the connotation of one has to lose, right, over the other. It's more like integrating and arranging, right? So first of all, find something that you like doing, right? So where you can really put your passion and your heart to, and then it doesn't feel really like work. So if you have that, that is already a big part of your answer. Second, take care of yourself, right? So your personal health is important. Nobody wins if you work yourself to the bone and then you don't come back alive, right? So as they say, so that's personal health situation. So I'm personally quite keen on that people take enough time for themselves, and then I make sure I have the same, right? And then lastly, it's really about having that extra bit of flexibility, right? So in how you can arrange your workday. So in every company is a bit different in that. So one thing that's peculiar on Amazon maybe is then that you have. So we are in the European time zone. The main headquarter is Seattle, so which is 9 hours behind us. So around about this time, typically Seattle comes online, and then you will have your whole workday shifts a little bit to the evening. But if you're flexible enough, and I'm in the lucky position that I can, then you basically have more of your family time in the morning hours. And that's fine. So that's working as we speak. Also, the homeschooling, you can build that one in. So our son is homeschooling. So it's really around integrating. It's around finding a job that you really feel passionate about, that you like, right? So, and it's about that extra bit of flexibility that you can demand from your work colleagues and arrange with your partner.
Yeah, absolutely. I think personally as well, I found Amazon super flexible during the recent times. I can say I've just come back from paternity leave. We've got a new addition to our family, and I'm really happy with the support that I've been given on that front from Amazon. So yeah, definitely getting family time as well as great career opportunities. Good. And just on that, you mentioned you're really busy. How do you keep up with the latest technology, Heiko? Me?
One is my 11-year-old boy, right? So helps me. So what's the latest? What's hip? What's cool, right? The other one is stand-ups, right? So since I'm new and there was a lot of stuff ongoing as I was onboarding, I couldn't do as much as I normally do, right? So, but that's one of high on my agenda now in Amazon. So joining the regular stand-ups with the teams, just get a little bit of feel for what's going on. And then I really like one-to-one, so sitting with engineers and ask them what are top of mind issues, right? So what they are working with, ask them to show me how to set up, how to play through the various work routines, right? So whether that's code reviews or check-ins or web labs, so how to dial up a new experience. So this is what it comes down to, very practical, very pragmatic things.
Good. We've spoken about software development engineering opportunities, SD2s, SD3s. Where would someone who joins us in those positions, where would their career go to? What are the job roles or options, or maybe is there a chance for different locations, different businesses with Amazon, maybe eventually? Yes. What would be the options for someone?
Yeah. So two thoughts on that. So firstly, once you pass the interviewing bar with Amazon, you're employable across Amazon. So this quite literally is the biggest tech company in the world. So you can find any business, any industry where Amazon doesn't have any team working on it, right? So that's one. Second, we really foster talent movement. So I'm actually quite keen on that people look around and look beyond what's on their plate to at some point also whenever they want to do or switch to another team, then absolutely that's supported, right? So and you will find that equal support from all people manager across Amazon. So to have that going. Now, when you come in as an engineer, you're typically what's called an individual contributor, an IC. So one of the key decisions that everybody has to make in their career, and I had the same. I started my career as an engineer. I was coding since I'm 15, so 32 years ago, and I'm still coding. So the key decision: you want to stay on this IC track, or do you want to go into people management? So this is when you change career tracks, and each of those career tracks, those are the main tracks. Each of those tracks has a whole bunch of roles that you can then fulfill. If you want to stay as an individual contributor in the engineering room, it's obviously SD1, 2, 3, and then it's principal engineer, senior principal engineer, and distinguished engineer. So the whole principal, senior, and distinguished engineering community in Amazon is just 600 people. So that's a quite unique and quite tough crowd to get into, right?
An exclusive cloud, I would say. Yeah.
Exclusive. Yeah. So, but we hired someone from outside who became a principal engineer. So it absolutely is possible. And we have people in our teams that actually got promoted into principal engineering community. So once, obviously, the quality of people that you will find there, it's quite flattering, right? So you will learn a lot from these folks, and you don't have to be a principal engineer to actually learn, right? So they do lots of broadcasting and office hours and so on, so that you can get in touch and learn. But that would be one career track in the engineering track. I stop here. So there's a lot of other IC tracks that we can talk about, and also people management tracks that we can talk about if people are interested.
Yeah, definitely. I think as well, just to confirm, we focus this talk definitely on senior software development engineers. If anyone feels that they don't necessarily want to be or don't have the skill set to be that, and they're more product focused, program focused, management focused, science focused, please, again, we have roles in those areas. Reach out to the recruitment team and let us know. I think one final question, Heiko, to wrap up. You covered earlier and said a few things that you've learned in the past year. What's sort of the one, if there's been one takeaway from your time at Amazon that surprised you and that you share with people, you know, why should they come and work at Amazon? What would you say?
It's the quality of the people. So honestly, whenever I met someone new and I spoke to around about 350 people in the first weeks, I always checked them out on LinkedIn, and I was always like positively shocked what career they already had before coming into Amazon or in Amazon itself. So it's really like if you can spend the time and talk to people, you will learn a lot.
Yeah.
Fascinating folks here.
Yeah, good. Brilliant. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Heiko. We have another Luxembourg Tech Night chat planned for 3rd of March. We'll be in touch with details around that soon in the follow-up email to you. So we'd love to see you again. You have the email address in the chat function, whichever side of the screen it's on. Please reach out to the hiring team. You have the link there for the job adverts if you feel like you want to apply directly or just browse what we have. And thanks again, Heiko. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks, folks. Have a great evening.